You're listening to Shoe In, covering the ins and outs of all things footwear, from sneakers to heels, loafers to slippers, and every type of shoe in between. Brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Shoe In Show. Matt, I know not a lot of people out there know, but I am a singer. You can find me on Spotify. Last year I dropped the hottest single for Supply Chains. I'll do a little, because I own the IP, I can say it. Normally we can't sing songs, but it was a number one hit among supply chain people, all 5 downloads. But it went like this. Why is my inventory stuck on a big old boat? And I don't want to give the rest away, but if you can find it on Spotify, I'll give you $100. But
keep looking.
I just dropped a brand new hit, and at least 2 people have downloaded it so far on Spotify. And just to tease it out for you at this point, reflecting where we are from last year with inventory issues in one direction, and it's a whole other new direction, and the song goes like this. Why did I order so much inventory? It's time to discount and promote. It ain't like last year when it was sitting on that big old boat. So
yeah.
So there's your interlude for where the world is. I always try to put out verses. Just like back in the old days, when the jesters in the court would come out with songs of yore. So that's my song of yore for what's happening in the marketplace. And I guess that really is the question, as the anger has shifted from finding the inventory to now finding what you're gonna do with the inventory.
Yeah. So that leads us to our guest, I think, and
Is he still there?
who's responsible for all 7 of the downloads of your 2 amazing songs.
I bet he is.
And that's Sam Poser, who is at Williams Trading, and the industry knows him. Love him or hate him, Sam brings his hot takes every chance he gets. Sam, you've been on Shoe and Show before. So welcome back. Last time we were in person in Vegas, but welcome back to the program. We're glad you're on, man.
Thanks for having me. That was a long time ago.
That was a long time ago. So many things have happened since. And as we head towards back to school, as we think about Andy's amazing lyrical prowess, talk to us about where you think inventory positions are right now, because as I always say, inventory is an art, not a science. And it's just really hard for, I think, our companies to get it right in this weird environment where there's a lot of demand and demand's, it's gone and so on and so forth. So what say you, Sam?
I think that, we've heard from a number of retailers lately talking about getting stuck, and it sounds like they're stuck on basics or stuck on a lot of product that sold last year, especially in the home space. If you had extra money last year and, you had bought a set of dishes and silverware 10 years before, and, I got new money and my set of 8 now has 4. Well, maybe I'll replace my dishes. And the demand for that kind of stuff went way up. And I think the buyers maybe at Walmart and Target said, wow, that went way up, and we think there's a lot of business we're missing. So they bought a lot more dishes and silverware for 22, and nobody had extra money. So the basics, that wasn't, they were going to live with their old dishes and just wash the dishes more often rather than spending that money. And then the other, in the footwear world, right now dress shoes is having a good recovery. One sales manager from one of the shoe companies I ran into, he said, that his dress shoe business was the best he's seen in years right now. And I agree right now, because of the opening up, weddings, proms, various things, people want something new and they're buying it. But also people got very used to being comfortable over the last few years. And, if people take that as a trend and take today's demand for dress, even if they're missing some sales now, and try to run that into 23, that's probably going to be a problem, and we'll probably get overstocked from a number of people in 23 in dress shoes, because the need won't be quite as extensive, and people still want to be comfortable. So while, sneakers are still selling, comfort sandals are selling, the comfort story hasn't gone away. One brand who we met with at Fannie, back in December, they were showing about 40 to 50% of their mix was dress. And in June, that was down to about 25%. And a lot of that 25% had moved to lower heels or onto platforms and away from, spiky heels and real dressy stuff, which is telling you that, they're telling me that, this probably is going to be a fleeting. And if you take this dress and try to correlate missed sales this year into next year, you're probably going to have the same problem that Walmart and Target did with a lot of their basic home products as well. I think it's really important for people for these retailers to really look at the demand and at what their inventory turn, and really plan their business almost on a weekly basis for sales. And then have a turn and have a margin expectation and a turn plan, and back it in to their purchases, rather than having just a bunch of open to buy. And here we filled that with the $1 million we have for the month of June, which seems to be what happened. And also, over the past two years or so, in late 20 and 21, a lot of retailers and brands realized they could do a lot more with less than they ever thought they could. I'm hopeful that that memory stays very much alive going forward. But we're already beginning to potentially see some cracks in that.
Yeah. What about, Sam, when you're talking to folks, what are, I think we just came out of one of the most revolutionary, groundbreaking consumer demand years of our history of existence on the world, right? And the planet. And then we hit this point and we see things falling down. When are people going to feel comfortable again about consumer demand, do you think?
Well, I think you have a lot of noise around it because of supply chain and stuff right now, where you can't really judge the demand well enough. And when you get the demand could be fine, and you could just be oversupplying that demand, which then makes the demand look weaker because there's too much inventory, which for me looks like bad planning versus what's really going on. But I also think that innovation and newness, and that can be defined in lots of different ways, is essential, for it. Back when I used to work at Bloomingdale's a zillion years ago, we had there was a very bad, the economy was really bad, and and the dress shirt buyer wanted to play it safe and bought white and blue dress shirts with a few different collars. And then they bought one pattern dress shirt, or a couple maybe, but not a lot of those because they were too nervous about that. And they were a little too nervous about that. And what ended up happening was the pattern dress shirts did great, and the white and blue didn't, because everybody already owned a white and blue dress shirt. So what? And I think that with all the information that consumers have now versus what it was, 20 some odd years ago, the definition of safe has even gotten, it's a lot more. What appears safe is probably more dangerous than it was back then.
How do you do good planning, though, Sam, in this environment? Like you mentioned bad planning. I just think it's so hard. It's easy to kind of Monday morning quarterback, but in the throes of things, it's got to be so difficult. It's got to be hard to plan in a normal year, much less a year like we've had over the last few. And to think that we'd be in an environment where the U.S. government artificially dumped $2 trillion into an economy we couldn't have even dreamt that up in our wildest dreams. So, like, how do you even come across are there any good planners? I guess is the question. It almost seems too difficult to accomplish.
Well, I think there are. I think there's a handful of retailers out there that are planning pretty well, and I think it becomes more important for brands to say no to retailers that think they can actually, that they request to buy more than they can actually sell. I can tell you a story back pre any of this. I was at Bloomingdale's a zillion years ago again, and we had the Ranger boot from Ralph Lauren, which many people listening to this probably remember. And that was a boot we had the first year. We bought it in tan. It sold out faster than you could imagine. Second year, we got black and tan, a lot more pairs. They sold out faster than you could imagine. Third year, we had black, tan, and an exclusive color, pebble grain colorway. And 59th Street Bloomingdale's did $450,000 of a $159 boot that year. The next year, I worked with my rep, and she and I were trying to figure out, what do we do? We bought 48 pairs for 59th Street. It took us 2 months to sell them. You sort of have to be aware of when it's over and what it is. And, I've also made my mistakes. That's my big, great win story. My boss, when I bought 48 pairs, she was saying, what the hell are you doing? We have to lap that. I said, yeah, but if, it's going to become one huge markdown. And we kept the whole thing exceptionally profitable if we do that. That's to really understand it. And again, I think if you speak to a lot of retailers out there, and if you ask the majority of the retailers out there, what's your best selling, about a specific shoe item, what's your best selling shoe? And they go, okay, it's shoe X. How did it sell? Well, we've sold 10% a week right out of the gate for the first 6 weeks. And I'm like, well, that's awesome. What's your sales plan? They go, well, I don't know. They don't have a sales plan for the item. They pay, buyers buy. And really, I think we're in the days of, buyers should be renamed profitable sellers, and they should understand what the demand is that could be comparing to, and this is where we are right now, maybe pre-COVID, take into account things that are being done better and worse by your company, if it's better omni-channel and all the things that go with that. Come up with, okay, this shoe is going to be 20% better than that one, and here's how we think it's going to sell. Here's what our turn is, and here's what our average price out the door is going to be, or our price out the door through that period of time, hence giving you a margin and a turn. And then you buy your inventory to support that. Versus, you have planned sales this month of here, your inventory is supposed to be at a total level of this, you have $200,000 of open to buy, you spend $50,000 on 4 items, I'm not going to be overbought. Until you realize you didn't have a sales plan for that item and it doesn't sell, and then you're overbought. If you build a sales plan first, you know exactly how that's supposed to do over a certain period of time. If it's doing better, you pull up orders. If it's doing worse, you cancel orders, take markdowns early, because the first markdowns work. Because if retailers in the past, when the weather's cold early in the spring, their sandal business is behind. And they think, well, when it gets warm, our sandal business is going to catch up. But you really never make it up, and people want to see new product. So you cancel orders, then you maybe take a price action so you can bring in the new one when it catches up. So when somebody walks into your store and it's warm, they can buy the new item, rather than, I came in March, but it was cold and you had that ugly sandal, and now that ugly sandal's still here and it's still at regular price. Why the heck am I going to buy it? And that goes back to planning, and to say, like for like items, what's really going on here? Not, we think we could have sold 50% more, so we're going to buy that much more inventory, not taking into account all the various things. I mean, everybody knew going into 22 that we were lapping stimulus. But for some reason, on some of this core product that spiked last year, retailers and brands didn't say no, and retailers said, wow, it's easy to buy more. There was huge demand last year. But what was the true reason for that demand? And I mean, that's what they're paid to do. I mean, I'm paid to do stocks. I'm paid to know what stocks are good. And I have a good batting average, but I'm not great. But your job is to, Matt and Andy, your guys' job is.
Tell Matt what his job is.
No, but I mean, the job is to support the footwear industry, all over, and to do whatever you can for that. Your job's not to be buying goods and selling goods. So when you're looking at how do they do it, well, that's not what you nor I are paid for. I was once paid to do that, so that's why I sort of understand it better than some other analysts maybe. But the fact of the matter is that you could see people, you could potentially see people getting over their skis. The supply chain certainly hurt things worse than it would have otherwise. I still believe that we're going to get some clarity onto what real demand is when we get into back to school. And I think for those companies that, experience a back to school selling season, that's going to sort of separate where the demand really is and what kind of products being bought. But again, you got to look at what's really going on around you, what's new, and so on. The days of saying to a brand, well, we did, $100,000 with you last year, so we're going to plan your overall brand up to 10% this year. Those days have to be over because you don't know if that brand has the product to support the 10% when you generally make those deals ahead of time. I mean, and those kind of deals still exist, and it's. I think a lot of this stuff's gotta end. And
can I ask you a question, sure. Sam? Is it okay to run out of product?
Yes.
Because I think there's this idea that you can't run out of product. You gotta have and I know there was issues last year with scarcity and all that. Well,
keeping supply below demand is essential to be able to do it, and that's why you really have to know how much you plan to sell, understand what that demand is. I mean, that's why, Nike has always allocated the Jordan shoes. And when they started to put more into the market, Jordan actually slowed down and the average selling price went down because it got a little oversaturated. Birkenstock is always telling people no all the time. But their business continues to grow because if there's demand for 1 million and you put 900,000 out there, you're going to have demand for let's say 1.2 million the following year. Then you could put 1.1 million out there. You can grow your business nicely and keep the average selling prices, and keep your margins elevated. And again, that's one of those things that I anticipated would have been learned big time, through, let's say, the back half 2020 through last year. But
it's it's human nature, Sam, to go to that to take that one last trip to the Golden Corral breakfast buffet.
Amen.
And load up the plate.
I'm glad there's no video.
And then regret it. And then you regret it, right? It's like, oh, why did I do that one last plate?
Or a fight broke out
in the Philly Golden Corral. But I digress. So I think it's just human nature when when it's going well, right, and things are selling, you just get your appetite before your fullness catches up with your brain. You just kind of keep going at it, right? So this is not a surprise. I'm not surprised that people keep going to the trough.
I'm not, but the thing is that I've talked to a lot of retailers primarily, but also brands. And I asked them, if I told you 5 years ago that you could do the revenue you did in 21 on the average inventory you had with the margins you had you would have told me, get out of town, and I would use harsher language. Um, and and they all agreed to that. So they are aware that they learned a new skill, but you have to stay true to it, and really use those learnings, and use, those companies that did the best tend to have the best omni-channel, best consumer engagement stuff, and really understand that as they've gotten to know their customers better, they should use that information not to take, make much more informed decisions. And there's a lot of companies out there that feel like, well, we're owed this, or in the case of Nike, Nike's pulling out, has pulled out of a lot of retailers and reduced allocations to others. And so now there's a lot of brands that are saying, wow, all these retailers have all this open to buy, so we can sell our stuff to them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if it's Adidas, K-Swiss, Reebok, New Balance, Lotto, I don't name a sneaker brand. If they don't have the Nikes and they're filling it up with the other stuff, yes, you might sell a few more of the other stuff, but if you're a Nike person, you walk in and go, well, I have this Adidas, Reebok, K-Swiss, whatever shoe, maybe 1 out of 10, 1 out of 20 might look, and probably less than that will buy. So having open to buy is much less important than having open to sell, and understanding what the consumer wants, not, well, we have open to buy because our big customer, our big brand left us, and now we have to really understand what can fill that gap and how to do it, but how not to say, well, there's $1 million of Nike open to buy that's there now. We can just put in whatever and hope it sells, which is sort of. I spoke to one brand when Nike's started to reduce their close up some of their accounts, and the president of this brand said to me he was very excited about that because it would allow them to get in the door. And I was like, that's true, but would it mean that any of their customers would care? And that's, at the end of the day, it's all about what the customer wants and what the customer cares about. And if they're not, what can you, the brand, or what could you do, the retailer, do to make them care, other than telling them, well, we've got this stuff? Which is what
the brand president just wants a shot, right? The brand president just wants a shot with that customer base who may have a loyal to that retailer and goes to that retailer continuously. So you can't fault him for
No, I can't fault him for it. But the thing was that he should have been working on that on his own e-commerce platform to create the demand, to know that he's done what he can. So when he goes in there, that customer is gonna buy. Gotcha. Because that's what, Nike's always had success with their pull model. I mean, they call it a pull model for a reason. Customers want it. They decide they're pulling it away from us, and we're not giving them everything they want, to Andy's point about inventory below demand. And that works. And that's why when the Jordan 11 shows up at Christmas time, they sell hundreds of thousands of pairs in probably less than a day at full price. Now, you're going to replace those hundreds of thousands of pairs for the retailers that got cut off from some of that access to some of that product. What do they fill that with? How much inventory will it take to sell to offset that? And from a turn and a margin perspective, are you really going to be able to make it back? Or should you be figuring out, how do we best engage our consumer, have them trust us, and then maybe you need 10 shoes in very small doses to make up for that one monster shoe from Nike. Mm-hmm. But people are trying to find that replacement item. There is no replacement item for that. I mean,
dramatic pause. There's no person.
I just think, I mean, like I know what you're saying, because if somebody had 100 pair of Nikes in their retail store, and Nike took that order away, and you went in and you were a Polk brand, which is super hot right now, and you went in and said, "I'll take 100, I'll take that whole spot." That's a bad proposition. As hot as Polk brand is, you might not sell all 100 of those, but it would be smart to take 10 maybe, and 10. But then it gets really hard, right? I think that's the challenge of the business model is economy of scale, right? It's like it's easier to do large volume, and then in the same way, it's easier to make 30 pairs of shoes for a season by a company instead of 60 pairs because of economy of scale. But it looks like there's this balance between how much SKUs and how many different product types we want in the marketplace and at what volume. But then you have cost issues, right? It's a lot easier to make,
right. I mean, but I think what's really changed today is that if you look at some of the brands or retailers out there, in some cases the product that they're making is great product, but the way it's being brought to market or the association that goes with that product isn't what it needs to be. And so the reason and so for instance the reason that they need to they need to create more than just the product. They need to create a story around it, a reason for being. For those who have listened to or read Simon Sinek, I mean, they need a why does this product exist, and not tell everybody what it does. I mean, it used to be that salespeople in a lot of stores, and everybody's been into stores, and you go in there and you're looking for a sneaker, and they pick up a sneaker. I'm looking for a running shoe, and they pick it up and they go, "Oh, this has all these features. It has gel in the heel and forefoot. It has some support in the under the arch." And they picked up the shoe because they like the color blue. And it's understanding that consumer who looked at that shoe didn't care about all those features and benefits initially. They just liked the way the shoe looked, and then how and what it meant to them, and that's what certain brands, generally by good marketing and controlling the distribution, have been able to do. Those people that say, well, I can put a ton of product into the marketplace, they mostly end up with selling a bunch and having a bunch left over that ruined, at much lower margins, that ruined what happened. And
I think the other part of this too is salespeople. In the past, we'd have a larger conversation about salespeople, really good salespeople being able to push product on people. But since COVID hit, our sales force is really depleted, and it seems like there's a lot more models around self-service than ever before in many places.
That's true, and that also goes down to what makes a good website, what people are able to tolerate. Yeah. Like, for instance, you can go on two websites. One might be easier to shop, but if you shop there, it might take a week and a half to get the shoe, versus another one that might be a little more difficult to shop, but the shoe shows up in 2 days. So again, you have to understand what's most important for your customer, and the best websites are easy to shop and deliver the product quickly. And I mean, we order dog food from Chewy. I mean, Chewy delivers. You order it today, it shows up tomorrow or the next day. I mean, you don't even know how they do it so fast. You order from.
They only have Chew it that way they can send it faster.
All right, thank you. Are you going to sing? Are you going to continue to sing? I'm going to sing you. I might get you the hook. I might get you the hook on that one, Andy.
Oh no! So Sam, let me ask you. So speaking of getting the hook, I do want to ask you this, because it's human nature to be wanted to be liked, right? We all want to be liked, and you're different from a lot of analysts because you have worked in the industry, so you have a background and a foundation in the industry, which is positive, I think. But how do you balance like this desire to be a part of the industry and respected and well liked with being critical and putting out a note that might get you in trouble with certain people. So how do you, we don't have that problem in FDRA. We can, everyone can like us because we don't step in the controversies, but how do you navigate that? Because
So I had a situation during Fannie where I saw one line, and I have been a fan of this company, a fan of the line for a while, but I thought that what they were doing wasn't like, there were some good points in it, but then there was lots of other things that didn't work, and I got scolded by the CEO of this company for getting a little over excited about this, and they said to me, "Why, you're doing this, but you like products so much, shouldn't you be working for one of these brands?" And I said, "Well, yeah, but it's like I understand sort of what drives these businesses, and I do this out of fandom. So when I get critical, it's because I'm a fan. I can get pretty biting in my notes. You've read them." But my point, I also write what I say. I don't write it and then go over and say, well, what I really meant was this. I just write it because I think it's the right thing to do. And I'm critical of companies I have buys on. I bring up positive points for companies I have sells on. But I think that, and I think that people. I sometimes have to tone it down, no doubt, but I think that openness. I'm doing it because I think it's the right thing, and I think it's helpful to the businesses. And sometimes I get a little over energetic, I guess is the way to put it.
Yeah, we get it. I mean, I haven't seen any notes yet on Polk footwear, but I'm waiting for your notes eagerly.
Next time if you have me on again, I will write a Polk footwear note and read it on the show.
Like mean tweets.
Oh man, that'd be amazing. Now I'll just have to have a designer and make the product line and get it out there and try to oversell.
All right, I'll make up the product line as I make up the note.
We have a business deal happening before our eyes, people.
That's hilarious. Sam, we appreciate your time and your thoughts on what's happening, and hopefully folks out there can listen to this conversation and just take a look at your plans as you have it. And it's never a bad thing just to listen to analysts and listen to intelligent people out in our industry and just double check your numbers, double check your strategy, look to see what's happening. This is what the podcast is all about. It's about exchanging ideas and thinking things a little bit differently, because we are definitely in different times, like we've never seen before. The highs and lows are coming a lot faster, a lot quicker. Just like that chewy dog food. Next day, you never know what's going to happen. But Matt, as we continue to navigate this, I think, maybe you want to put a really good plug in for the Tuesday calls that we have where we try to cover this in real time.
Yeah, we gather as an industry every 2:00 Eastern on Tuesdays, like probably 50 times out of the year. We only take a few weeks off. And it's designed for us to check in on the shoe economy. Sam gets on the calls, others do as well, and it's just a great one-stop shop to always have your proverbial thumb in the wind, measuring what's happening within our industry. So if you want more information on that call, how to join, go to fdra.org or shoot us a note at the email address info@fdra.org.
All right, thank you for that, folks. As always, shoeandshow.com is the website. Our full catalog's on there. You can go back and hear me sing other of my great hits across many different episodes. Sam shaking his head. No, that's okay, Sam. Not everybody's a fan. Not everybody knows music like I do, so that's okay. But folks, we appreciate you listening. Make sure you tune in next week when we have another great episode dropping. And tell your friends and colleagues about this as well, because we want to make sure that we're reaching as many people across the footwear industry as possible with as many ideas to help the industry grow and thrive in this strange, great, dynamic time. So with that, thank you again. Until next time, Shoe In is out.
Shoe In has been brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. For information about FDRA, visit fdra.org.